The making of a new king. Thailand's King Maha Vajiralongkorn. The 64-year-old assumed Thailand's throne on December the 1st, more than a month after the death of his father, the late King Bhumibol Adulyadej. He had been expected to ascend to the throne immediately, but had asked for time to grieve. In a televised broadcast, he accepted the throne following an invitation from Parliament formalising his accession. But the official coronation won't take place until October 2017, after a year of mourning for King Bhumibol.
ข้าพเจ้าขอตอบรับเพื่อสนองพระราชปณิธานและเพื่อประโยชน์ของประชาชนชาวไทยทั้งปวง
He succeeds a man described as Thailand's peace broker and champion of democracy. The much-respected King Bhumibol succumbed to his illnesses at the age of 88. His death set off widespread grief throughout the country. King Bhumibol led Thailand through some trying times and earned him the respect of the nation. The same will be expected of the new king. Serving since 1946, King Bhumibol was the country's symbol of national unity. Since the transition to a constitutional monarchy in 1932, the country has had 20 constitutions, 29 prime ministers, witnessed 19 attempted coups, 12 of them successful. Yet in these turbulent political waters, he was a constant anchor, the one who is credited for keeping Thailand from plunging into political anarchy. His passing comes at a time when the country is once again facing some familiar challenges to its democracy: increased military control of the political system and ever-growing divisions in Thai society. The late king's only son will be undertaking his father's responsibilities. King Vajiralongkorn was educated in the United Kingdom and at Australia's Royal Military College. He holds high-ranking posts in the Thai Army, Navy, as well as the Air Force. Currently single, he has been married 3 times and is father to 7 children. King Vajiralongkorn did not participate in most public and political duties, leaving them to his revered father. Now, without the country's familiar guiding hand, many worry Thailand's deep divisions will resurface. The new king will need all his father's political acumen and authority to guide Thailand through what most predict will be challenging times ahead. Much of the respect that King Bhumibol garnered will be passed along with the crown. His influence will have to be earned.
When a person has set such a high standard and is so much loved and respected and admired for his accomplishments of what he did, it's always difficult for a successor.
The late king was a moral authority, for many a father figure. When he spoke, people listened.
ทุกฝ่ายจึงต้อง
The world's longest reigning monarch tackled many of Thailand's biggest problems. He spearheaded thousands of rural developmental projects to improve the lives of desperate farmers. Through initiatives such as developing water management to introducing new methods of farming, he revolutionized Thailand's agricultural system.
His role as a father-like figure for the nation, he has devoted himself not inside the grand palace, but out in the countryside, helping the poor people, doing things from irrigation to weather forecast. His so-called palace in Bangkok is actually more like an agricultural experimental lab.
The king's legacy in the rural communities remains strong. His frequent visits to these often neglected areas are still shown today in Thai cinemas before every movie. His efforts to modernize the country's healthcare and education systems, as well as his attention to rural communities, made Thais see him as a man of the people. He was also one of the richest monarchs in the world. worth an estimated $30 billion. Portraits of King Bhumibol are hung in every office, building, as well as in most homes, a testament to the genuine affection that many Thais hold for their king. He was also able to forge important ties with one of Thailand's strongest power brokers, the military. Thailand's path to democracy started after a bloodless coup in 1932 against then King Prajatipok. Thailand adopted a model of constitutional monarchy. Against a backdrop of discontent, the coup was led by civil servant Pridi Panomyong and military officer Plak Pibun Songkram. Since then, the military's influence has grown stronger, with officers taking over many ministerial roles, including that of Prime Minister. While the coup ended almost 7 centuries of absolute monarchy, it also ushered in an era of direct military involvement in Thailand's politics. The generals always claimed to be the defenders of the monarchy. Many coups launched during King Bhumibol's reign were justified as necessary to protect him. But the king successfully stifled many of the military's efforts to consolidate its power. In October 1973, at the height of bloody student protests against the military government, his interjection brought an end to the violence. Summoning military leaders, he ordered them to step down and leave the country. His mediation paved the way for the first non-military government in over 2 decades. Almost 20 years later, in May 1992, another military coup led to 3 days of bloody street clashes between soldiers and pro-democracy demonstrators. The clashes left dozens of civilians dead, hundreds more wounded. In an extraordinary meeting that was broadcast live, the king reprimanded the leaders of both sides as they kneeled before him. He demanded they put an end to the violence. The army leader resigned and democracy was reinstated, at least temporarily. King Bhumibol's interjections as Thailand's peace broker enabled him to rein in the military, his actions always presented as being for the good of the nation. The same will be expected of the new king. Crown Prince Maha Vajiralongkorn will need to nurture his father's strong ties with the military. The first challenge he will undoubtedly face when he accedes to the throne will be dealing with the turmoil that has plagued Thailand for the past decade, one that repeatedly pitted the military against those who say they are defenders of democracy. In 2001, Thaksin Shinawat, a former police officer turned telecommunications billionaire, was voted in as Prime Minister. His supporters believed that unlike former politicians, he would keep his promises, that he was a man of action.
เหมือนกับจังหวัดอุดรธานีเนี่ยปี 4243 น้ำท่วม 2 ปี 3 ครั้ง ทั่วเมืองอุดรเลย เสียหายมหาศาล เรียกว่าน้ำท่วมกันทั้งเมือง นายกชวนหลีกภัยมา 2 ครั้ง ทางจังหวัดทำโครงการอะไรต่างๆไปให้ ก็เอาไปเก็บไว้ในลิ้นชัก ก็ไม่ได้มีการแก้ไข พอมานายกทักษิณปี 44 น้ำท่วม
Thaksin was re-elected in 2005, a landslide victory, making him the first ever democratically elected Prime Minister to complete a full term in office. But he was forced from power less than a year later in a military coup. Opponents of Thaksin accused him and his family of pocketing more than $2 billion in questionable dealings. He was also accused of using his position to evade paying taxes. Allegations Thaksin staunchly denies.
It's quite
But many believe it was his immense popularity that was the real motive behind the coup. He was seen as a possible threat to the beloved king, as he was thought to want to abolish the monarchy, which gave the military a legitimate role in Thai politics. Again, Thaksin has always refuted these accusations.
This is very dangerous for me, because they try to allege me because of my popularity that I will turn Thailand into a republic, which is I never think.
The king was quick to approve the coup. He granted its leaders an audience, signaling his support.
When you deal with some such popular politician who was elected by the people through military intervention, through non-democratic means, it reinforces his popularity. And that is why, for the past 10 years or so, his name is still a common household name in Thai politics.
Thaksin's removal from office didn't end the political crisis. Though in self-imposed exile, he still yields considerable influence and power. While previous coups may have managed to mask political schisms in the country, Thaksin's removal divided Thailand into two prominent political groups, representing themselves with colours. The red shirts were formed from the ranks of Thaksin's large support base and demanded his reinstatement. The yellow shirts were formed from the urban middle class and ultra-royalists. They called for Thaksin's arrest. Their standoff soon turned violent. Reds pitted against yellows. Thailand's descended into chaos, prompting fears of civil war. In early 2010, at the height of their protests, tens of thousands of red shirts demonstrators gathered in Bangkok, hoping to force the new Prime Minister, Abhisit Vejjajiva, to step down. They poured containers of their very own blood at the gates of Government House, as well as at the residence of the Prime Minister, a clear statement they were ready to die for their cause.
เราต้องรวมพลังให้เป็นหนึ่งเดียวคนเป็นล้านๆคน 2-3 ล้านคนให้เป็นหนึ่งเดียวเอาเลือดเพื่อประชาธิปไตยเพื่อความถูกต้องของประเทศไทยครับ
In a bid to quell the protests, the opposite government met with Red Shirts leaders in televised negotiations. But both sides walked away, no agreement reached. The government declared a state of emergency. The Red Shirts remained defiant, their protests in the nation's capital growing in size and assertiveness. Government warnings that a crackdown was imminent were ignored. Security forces attempted to take back control of a key bridge next to Bangkok's Democracy Monument. The Red Shirts fought back. Overwhelmed, the military retreated. But the Red Shirt victory was to be short-lived. As they mourned their dead from the previous night's violence, tensions were escalating. That day, 25 people died, 20 of them civilians. 850 more were injured. April 10th will long be remembered as a dark day for Thailand. Wary of the recent casualty toll, authorities decided to pull back military troops, sending riot police instead. Outraged, Yellow Shirts leaders felt the government was losing control and threatened to take matters into their own hands.
จะวิเคราะห์สถานการณ์แล้วเป่าปี๊บเมื่อไหร่มาทันทีนะครับเต็มออกมากันทั้งเรือบินมาทั้งรถไม่ต้องไปห่วงใครทั้งสิ้นครับใส่ชื่อเหลืองมาเลย
The stakes were now rising. armed troops returned to the streets. Military checkpoints dotted Bangkok. Red shirt demonstrators bared the brunt of government intimidation, harassment, and violence. While some were armed with guns and Molotov cocktails, most fought with bamboo sticks, burning tires, their defense lines. In a speech to the nation, Prime Minister Abhisit warned that the army was committed to end the protest with force if necessary. Less than a week later, the largest military offensive in this conflict turned the capital of the so-called Land of Smiles into a war zone. Tanks and soldiers surged into red shirts' camps, breaking through makeshift barriers. The demonstrators were confronted with truncheons, tear gas, and live bullets. Some ran to a nearby Buddhist temple, seeking shelter and safety. They didn't find any. 6 civilians were killed, all unarmed, shot dead by Thai army soldiers. This brought an end to the Red Shirts' 7 weeks of defiance. The death toll, 91 dead, 1,800 injured. The psychological damage on the country, immeasurable. But even in their retreat, they showed defiance, burning down 37 buildings they say symbolize Thailand's economic elite. Banks, TV stations, and shopping malls reduced to rubble. While the country may have seen the end of that violent chapter, the smoke, debris, and deserted streets that followed bore testament to deep divisions. For the Red Shirts, the issue had become more than just support for a particular politician. They saw their rallying cry as the defense of democracy, something Thailand has struggled to achieve for decades.
When you look at the red shirts, many people would define red shirt as mostly the supporters of former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra, whereas the actual origination of the red shirt movements came from the anti-military coup protesters, demonstrators who used the red as the color, and they didn't have any clear links to Prime Minister Thaksin.
In 2011, Yingluck Shinawatra, Thaksin's younger sister, was voted in, becoming the country's first female prime minister. But critics accused her of acting as a puppet for her elder brother. Yingluck's government attempted to pass an amnesty bill for political offences committed after the 2006 coup. The bill sparked fury among the yellow shirts. It triggered the protests, which led to Yingluck's political demise. Opponents feared the ruling party would use it to allow Thaksin back into Thailand without serving his jail sentence. But accusations of corruption in a rice subsidy scandal fueled the crisis. A constitutional court also ruled that she abused power by demoting a top security official. Protests in support and in opposition of Yingluck put Bangkok under gridlock. Once again, the military intervened. The entire government was ousted, leaving Thailand yet again under military rule. The leader of the military coup, Prayut Chan-o-cha, was appointed as the new prime minister. Though ailing, King Bhumibol met with the army's top general. That was understood to be an endorsement of the coup. But for many, the coup failed to mask the military's true intentions. It was seen as a political move intended to ensure the army's power. They also say it was a deliberate act to control the monarchy, and with the king's health failing, the succession. While the prince now has the support of the military, the royal public relations machine is busy polishing the image of the presumed heir. In the last few years, he's been playing a more active and visible role. For his mother, Queen Sirikit's 83rd birthday, the Crown Prince Vajiralongkorn celebrated by leading thousands of cyclists through the streets of Bangkok, a rare public appearance. But any real assessment of either the Crown Prince or his late father's actions is almost impossible under Thailand's lèse majesté law. The 100-year-old law makes it a criminal offence to say or write anything that can be deemed critical of members of the royal family. Anyone doing so can face up to 15 years in prison for each infraction.
The law itself states that nobody can defame, insult, or threaten the monarch, queen, heir apparent, or regent. The problem is that neither defamation, insult, or even threat are clearly defined in the law. So this loose language effectively has allowed for the abuse of these laws.
But as Thailand attempts to navigate its way back towards civilian rule, the death of their beloved king leaves the country bereft. In August 2016, Thailand voted to accept a military-backed constitution, despite fears that it would cement the army's powers. The constitution includes provisions for a military-appointed Senate and for an unelected Prime Minister to take power in times of political crisis. Military rulers insist the new constitution will curb rampant corruption and offers the only way for Thailand to once again find political stability and return to increased democracy.
Naturally, the current military regime would want to serve their own interest first and foremost, so they need to ensure that what happens next, they protect their own interests. Nobody's going to put them in jail, and I think the interest of the country comes later, and that is a sad news for Thailand.
Criticism of the constitution was banned prior to the referendum. Anyone doing so faced a jail sentence of up to 10 years. The lack of transparency in the entire constitutional reform process is reflected in the low turnout. Around 50% of eligible voters participated in the referendum. Results showed that around 60% supported the charter. With the military having cemented their powers, they are sure to also play a key role in the succession. The former general and current Prime Minister Prayuth has been the most visible official since the king's death. It was he who announced the news to the nation and confirmed the Crown Prince would assume the throne. Millions of Thais have donned black since his death, a remarkable show of grief. Still, most Thais are now ready to welcome the new king.
ได้กษัตริย์องค์ใหม่วันนี้ด้วยแล้วก็ได้ทำพิธีได้ร่วมทำพิธีดีใจได้ร่วมทำพิธีถวายรับพระองค์ใหม่
คู่กันครับติดคู่กันเพราะว่าท่านก็ทรงเป็นพระราชบิดาพระราชโอรสด้วยกันสืบราชวงศ์สันติวงศ์มาด้วยกันทุกพระองค์ตั้งแต่ตรงหัวยาว
But the nation's unifying figure leaves the country deeply divided. It will now be up to the new king to fill his father's shoes to become Thailand's moral and spiritual authority.